Welcome to the Radio Revenue Podcast. Today, we're embarking on a completely new mission for this deep dive.
We really are.
Yeah, we're unpacking Verizon's newly released 2025 annual report, which, in the financial world, is known as their Form 10-K.
Right. The big one.
Exactly. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A financial regulatory filing. Seriously.
Sounds a bit dry.
It does. But trust me on this one, we're looking right past the incredibly dense accounting tables and the hundreds of pages of legal boilerplate.
Oh, yeah. There is a lot of boilerplate.
So much. But we're doing it to uncover something much more compelling. We're looking at the fascinating story of how the entire world communicates, the absolute massive scale of the networks being built all around you, and the hidden, sometimes terrifying risks buried inside our digital infrastructure.
It's essentially a blueprint of the internet's physical reality.
Yeah.
The numbers in a report like this, they don't just tell us about a company's profit margins for the year.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Much bigger. They act as a real-time ledger of how human connectivity is evolving. So we're going to take all that raw financial data and connect the dots.
Connect it to the broader technological landscape.
Exactly. The landscape that dictates how we function every single day.
And that's exactly why you should care about this deep dive. Whether you're checking your monthly phone bill or streaming a high-definition video on your commute.
Or just trying to stay safe from hackers online.
Exactly. This document reveals exactly where your money goes. It shows how a telecommunications giant's massive strategic shifts directly impact your daily digital life.
It's your world.
Yeah, they're just building the invisible roads for it.
And the scale of those invisible roads is almost impossible to comprehend until you see the raw data laid out in black and white.
It really is.
Because, I mean, most people interact with the telecom company through a tiny glass screen in their pocket. They're completely unaware of the gargantuan machinery required to make that little 5G icon light up.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the sheer scale of this operation is staggering.
Staggering is the right word.
Verizon is a financial juggernaut. In 2025, their operating revenues hit $138.2 billion.
Billion, with a B.
With a B. That's an increase of 2.5% from 2024. And when you look under the hood, this machine has two main engines. First, there's the consumer segment.
Which is probably where you and I interact with them the most.
Right. That segment brought in $106.8 billion, representing about 77% of their total revenue.
Wow.
Then there's the business segment, generating $29.1 billion, or about 21% of the revenue. But the number that really made my jaw drop.
The cash flow.
Yes. They generated a staggering $37.1 billion in cash, purely from operations.
Yeah.
Where does a company even begin to allocate that much liquid cash?
To put $37.1 billion of operational cash flow into perspective, they're generating over $100 million in pure cash every single day of the year.
That is just unreal.
It isn't just a healthy profit margin, that's a massive war chest.
A war chest they definitely need right now.
Oh, they need every single penny of it. Because we are in the middle of a fundamental transition in how telecommunications works.
Right.
For decades, the industry relied on traditional copper wires. But the 10K highlights a definitive, really aggressive shift away from that legacy infrastructure.
They're tearing it all out.
Basically, they're moving toward a 100% fiber optic network for their wireline services.
Yeah.
But the really fascinating pivot is their push into wireless home internet, specifically what they call fixed wireless access, or FWA.
The FWA growth is explosive right now. The report notes they've hit 5.7 million fixed wireless access connections.
That's a huge jump.
Huge. And for you listening, if you aren't familiar with FWA, it essentially uses radio frequencies like the 5G signal your smartphone uses to power your entire home internet.
Right.
So instead of waiting for a technician to come out, drill holes in your house, run a physical cable through your wall.
Which nobody likes.
Nobody likes it. They just hand you a box.
Right.
You plug in this receiver, it catches the cellular signal from a tower miles away, and boom, your whole house has Wi-Fi.
It's completely changing the broadband game.
Completely.
Think about the friction that removes from the consumer experience. You're bypassing the last mile problem that has plagued internet providers for decades.
Because laying physical cable is hard.
It's astronomically expensive. Laying cable to every single suburban house or rural farm, you have to dig trenches, get permits.
Yeah.
By beaming that connection through the air, you dramatically lower the cost of customer acquisition.
Which brings us perfectly to the major acquisitions they finalized in January 2026.
Ah, yes, the big news.
This is a huge surprise to a lot of people in the tech space.
Yeah.
Verizon completed a $22.3 billion acquisition of Frontier Communications.
Right.
But the mechanics of the deal are what stand out. They paid $9.4 billion in cash, and they willingly assumed $12.9 billion of Frontier's debt.
That's a lot of debt to take on.
Almost $13 billion in someone else's debt. Sounds like a massive liability. Why would they make that move?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it all comes back to that war chest we talked about. By acquiring Frontier, they aren't just buying a list of customer names.
What are they buying?
They're buying the physical fiber optic cables already buried in the ground across 31 states.
Ah, right. The infrastructure.
Exactly. Like we just said, digging trenches, securing local permits, tearing up sidewalks to lay new fiber from scratch is a logistical nightmare.
It takes years.
Years and a fortune. Assuming Frontier's debt is simply the premium Verizon is willing to pay to instantly teleport their infrastructure 5 years into the future.
So they're just buying time.
They're locking down physical territory in the broadband wars.
And they didn't stop there. Just days later, on January 30th, they finalized the acquisition of Starry.
Yeah, that was an interesting one.
This one is incredibly targeted. Starry specifically focuses on apartment buildings and multi-dwelling units to push that fixed wireless access service we just talked about.
Multi-dwelling units, or MDUs, are the absolute holy grail for internet service providers.
Because of the density.
Exactly. If you can put one receiver on the roof of a massive high-rise apartment building, you can potentially serve hundreds of paying customers with a single point of infrastructure.
Wow, that's efficient.
Very. Starry gives them a turnkey solution to beam high-speed internet directly into dense urban environments where laying new cables is virtually impossible.
That's a total land grab.
It is. Traditional voice services, the old landline telephone, are in a state of terminal decline. Telecommunications giants know that to survive, they must bet everything on broadband and mobile data consumption.
But building and upgrading all that infrastructure is anything but cheap. The report lays out their capital expenditures for 2025, and it landed at $17 billion.
$17 billion.
A massive chunk of that money is going toward virtualizing their network infrastructure, specifically something called vRAN.
Right, virtualized radio access network.
Yes. And, of course, they're heavily integrating artificial intelligence to handle all this future data demand.
Laying the groundwork for what will eventually become 6G.
Exactly. But for the average listener who isn't a network engineer, what does virtualizing a network actually mean?
Let's use an analogy. Think about how we used to watch movies. You had to buy a physical DVD player.
Right.
And its only job was to play DVDs. If a new format came out, you had to throw out the machine and buy a new one.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Well, that's how traditional cell towers work. They're packed with custom, expensive physical hardware designed to do one specific job.
Okay.
What vRAN does is replace all that specialized hardware with standard, off-the-shelf computer servers running specialized software.
Oh, I see.
It's like replacing your DVD player with a streaming app on your smart TV.
So instead of having to send a crew to climb a 200-foot tower every time they want to upgrade the network.
They can just push a software update from a centralized office.
Wow. That changes everything.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It makes the network infinitely more flexible, cheaper to maintain in the long run, and incredibly responsive.
And then you add AI into that mix.
Exactly. When you add AI, the network can actually monitor itself. It can predict where traffic jams are going to happen.
Like a stadium full of people suddenly uploading videos.
Right. And it automatically reroutes bandwidth to accommodate the surge without a human ever pressing a button.
But that transition to AI and virtualized networks brings us to a much more sober reality hidden in the 10K.
Yeah, there is a flip side.
While these technologies create incredible efficiencies, they fundamentally change the nature of the work required to maintain the system. In the fourth quarter of 2025, Verizon announced plans to reduce its workforce by over 13,000 positions.
It's the inevitable friction of technological progress.
It is.
When you move from a hardware-heavy network that requires thousands of technicians climbing poles and splicing physical wires to a software-defined network managed by algorithms.
You simply need fewer people.
You do.
The report states that over 80% of those affected employees exited the company in December 2025 alone. That brings their total employee count down to roughly 89,900.
That's a massive rapid shift.
It really is. And I really want you, the listener, to pause and consider this dynamic. As consumers, you demand incredibly seamless, lightning-fast, AI-driven customer service and network reliability.
We all want our phones to just work.
But that efficiency, that flawless streaming experience, comes with the very real human cost of a shrinking workforce.
It requires us to critically think about how legacy infrastructure companies manage their human capital during a period of intense technological pivot.
Right.
And the historical context of a company like Verizon makes this even more complex. This is one of the largest unionized companies in the nation.
Yes, the filing explicitly notes that.
Approximately 27% of Verizon's workforce is represented by labor unions, specifically the Communications Workers of America and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers.
And the 10K also mentions that their collective bargaining agreements in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast regions are up for renewal in August 2026.
That is going to be a tense negotiation.
You don't have to be a labor expert to see the storm brewing there. Negotiating new contracts right after eliminating 13,000 jobs to make way for AI and automation is going to be incredibly fraught.
They're trying to optimize their business structure for an AI-driven future while honoring their obligations to a deeply entrenched workforce.
A workforce that literally built the legacy systems over the past century.
Exactly. The financial efficiencies of automation are crystal clear on the balance sheet, but transforming the human element of a massive corporation is always turbulent.
Yeah.
The people who historically maintain the copper networks aren't necessarily the same people who write the code for a virtualized radio access network.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because managing human capital and laying miles of fiber aren't the only massive challenges they're navigating.
Not even close.
We need to talk about the dark side of all this connectivity. We've talked about the billions in revenue, but the risk factors section of this 10K reads like a modern cybersecurity thriller.
It really does.
Specifically, I want to highlight the Salt Typhoon cyber attack from September 2024.
When we usually hear about corporate hacks in the news, we think about criminals trying to steal millions of credit card numbers.
Right, or a syndicate locking down a hospital's computers to demand a massive ransomware payout.
But Salt Typhoon was entirely different. This was a highly sophisticated, state-sponsored cyber espionage campaign.
The report explicitly states that the threat actor infiltrated the network with a very narrow, terrifying focus.
They weren't after money.
No. They were trying to obtain information about a limited number of specific individuals primarily involved in government or political activity.
Just let that sink in.
Yeah. That means foreign governments are actively breaking into our domestic telecom networks not to disrupt service, but to spy on specific American targets. How does an attack like that even work?
Well, state-sponsor actors like Salt Typhoon don't usually break down the front door.
They're more subtle.
Very subtle. They find a tiny, forgotten vulnerability in a router or a network switch deep inside the infrastructure. Once they're inside, they don't make a lot of noise. They quietly set up camp, monitor the data flowing through the pipes, and extract the specific communications of their targets.
Wow.
It's digital wiretapping on a massive, sophisticated scale.
And this ties directly back to our earlier discussion about artificial intelligence. The filing makes it very clear that the rapid evolution of AI is a double-edged sword for these companies.
What's fascinating here is how Verizon is spending billions using AI to make their networks more efficient and secure.
But the hackers are doing the same thing.
Exactly. Malicious actors are using those exact same AI tools to probe the network for weaknesses millions of times a second.
Millions.
AI allows hackers to automate their attacks, making them more frequent, more severe, and significantly more difficult to detect. It creates an endless arms race.
It fundamentally changes what a telecommunications provider actually is. They can no longer view themselves simply as commercial utilities selling internet packages.
No, they're actively serving as the frontline defense in global cyber warfare.
That's a heavy burden for a publicly traded company to carry.
It's an immense responsibility, because if a bank gets hacked, you lose money.
Which is bad.
Sure, but if a telecom network gets compromised by a foreign adversary, you potentially compromise national security, government communications, and the fundamental privacy of citizens. The stakes are infinitely higher.
And cybersecurity isn't the only burden dragging on them. The risk factors section of this 10K is incredibly transparent about other looming threats.
They lay it all out.
Objectively looking at the filing, they're facing intense macroeconomic pressures. They specifically cite inflation and the potential impact of tariffs and international trade policies on their supply chain.
That makes sense.
Because, let's face it, the microchips, the servers, and the network equipment they need to build these virtualized 5G and 6G networks rely on a highly complex global supply chain.
Right. And if the cost of raw materials spikes, or if international trade rates get snarled by new tariffs,
They feel it.
a company buying billions of dollars of hardware every year feels that impact immediately. It's a massive operational blind spot.
Beyond the macroeconomic factors, there's also the sheer weight of their balance sheet. We spent time marveling at their $37.1 billion in operating cash flow.
The war chest.
Right. But we also have to look at the other side of the ledger. As of the end of 2025, they're carrying $158.2 billion in total debt.
That's an astronomical amount of leverage.
It really is.
Even for a company generating massive cash, carrying nearly $160 billion in debt in a fluctuating interest rate environment requires incredibly precise financial engineering.
I can imagine.
Every time they refinance a portion of that debt, a tiny swing in interest rates can cost them hundreds of millions of dollars.
And then there are what we might call the ghosts of networks past.
Oh, right, the legacy issues.
The report outlines reputational and potential legal risks stemming from their legacy infrastructure. For instance, the 10K flags ongoing litigation and regulatory scrutiny regarding old lead-sheathed cables left behind from the copper wire days.
It perfectly highlights the unique vulnerability of massive infrastructure companies. Their physical footprint spans the entire continent.
Yeah.
Decisions made by engineers in 1975 to use specific materials for cabling are now material risks on a balance sheet in 2025.
Half a century later.
Regardless of how any specific legal battles or environmental assessments play out in court, the mere presence of that aging legacy infrastructure creates an ongoing financial liability.
Whether it's extreme weather-damaging coastal cell towers or regulatory scrutiny over century-old cables.
Their physical assets are constantly under pressure.
So, what does this all mean? We've gone through the billions of dollars in revenue, the massive strategic shift away from copper toward fiber and fixed wireless access,
The hard reality of AI displacing thousands of workers.
and the terrifying new frontier of nation-state cyber warfare.
Right.
For you, the listener, it paints a picture of Verizon as an incredibly profitable cash-generating machine. But it's a machine that's forced to constantly run at full speed just to stand still.
That's a great way to put it.
They have to continually reinvent themselves, assuming billions in debt to buy up competitors like Frontier just to get fiber in the ground, shedding tens of thousands of jobs to stay lean for an AI future.
And fighting off advanced government hackers just to maintain the basic integrity of the services you rely on every day.
It's a relentless, never-ending cycle of capital investment and technological adaptation.
And it leaves us with an incredibly important question to ponder as we close out this deep dive.
What's that?
If our private telecommunications companies are now the primary targets for advanced state-sponsored hackers like Salt Typhoon, are they fundamentally transforming?
Right.
Are they ceasing to be purely commercial businesses and effectively becoming de facto national security agencies?
Wow.
And if private companies are now the ultimate guardians of our national security infrastructure, what does that ultimately mean for your personal privacy when your internet provider holds the literal keys to your entire digital life?
It was a Revenue Radio podcast. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated with our latest analyses.